Why did it take a national newspaper to force Angela Rayner to resign? Isn't that your job?
Well, the media do a fantastic job, Trevor. Like yourself and many newspapers are there to help to highlight scandals. We had played our part too. We'd working with Kemi, who did a great job on this. We were writing to Angela Rayner and various different other bodies, including the Independent Advisor on Ministerial Standards and others, and HMRC indeed, from May of this year. So we'd been really hounding Angela Rayner to tell the truth. We knew that something was wrong. We've been told by lots of people we were completely wrong in doing this, that we were picking on somebody unfairly, and that proved not to be the case. We did help to establish exactly what Angela Rayner had done, which led to her resignation.
Isn't that your problem, though? You've been banging on about this, you say, since May. Nobody paid the slightest bit of attention until a national newspaper took up the campaign. That doesn't sound like a very effective opposition.
Well, I think the media are really important, Trevor. You know, the public needs to understand what Angela Rayner was.
We are not the opposition. We're just purveyors of message. Why aren't you doing your job?
Well, we were, Trevor. As I said, we were writing to various different people from May, June last year. As soon as we found out she'd bought a third home, we wrote to the people in charge of who can vote on the electoral roll. We wrote to HMRC. We wrote to that independent advisor. Those things were very effective. And indeed, the independent advisor, Laurie Magnus, when he made his judgment on Angela Rayner, said that this only came to light. She only really held her hands up because of the intense public scrutiny. We helped with that. Of course, we don't do these things alone. The media are very important in terms of bringing this to the public consciousness. That's what we did. We did a great job. And I'm going to say no other party was interested in this at all. We were the ones that were working with the media to make sure these matters were brought to light, and indeed the investigation took place, and she had to resign as a consequence.
She, like all other resigning or retiring cabinet ministers, is entitled to a severance payment until the rules are changed next month. What's your view? Should she take it?
Of course not. Angela Rayner voted in February last year that no minister who's been investigated or was guilty of this kind of offence should ever receive a severance payment. I expect her to be as good as her word.
All right, let's talk about the future of the Conservative Party. People who you and I both respect would be saying this morning that the energy on the right of politics is all with reform, and there's lots of talk about where they might go. Does the prospect of an alliance between Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson, as called for by Nadine Dorries today, send a chill down your spine?
Not at all. That's not going to happen. I'm always interested in what Nadine has to say, but I don't agree with many things she says, and I don't agree with that either. Of course, listen, Nigel Farage and reform are very good at razzmatazz. Interesting to see all that happening on stage over the last couple of days. But the reality is there was no mention whatsoever of how they're going to fill their own £140 billion a year black hole. And put that in context, as you know, Trevor, there's already a deficit in the country because of Labour's actions, about £130 billion a year. So you're talking about spending commitments of nearly £300 billion a year more than we're collecting in taxes. It is simply impossible. It would cause market crisis.
Forgive me, I can hear viewers shouting, you should know all about deficits because you ran up a massive one.
We don't run up a deficit. Deficit happens in year. The debt certainly increased because of what we had to do.
You did it every single year for the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. You ran a deficit.
Well, but look at what was happening in those years, Trevor. Obviously, the pandemic, where we put £500 billion into the economy to save hundreds of thousands of businesses from going bust, millions of jobs that had never been done before. I don't see many people saying we were spending too much at that time. Quite the opposite, if anything. And then we had the cost of living crisis that was spiked due to Putin's invasion of Ukraine. It pushed our energy bills up. We stepped in to support householders and businesses. Otherwise, there would have been a crisis in many different areas of this country. So, what option did we have at that point in time? Of course, we want to balance the books. We're the only party that will not bankrupt this country. And we have a good plan in terms of getting the public finances back in shape, particularly around reform of welfare, changes to the welfare system, which, again, we want to spend less on welfare. And you've got people like Nigel Farage who want to spend more on welfare by scrapping the 2-child limit on benefits.
Just one quick one on the issue of the moment, which is illegal migration. Nigel Farage says he'd send women. Well, I've just been talking to Zia Yusuf, who I couldn't quite persuade to say in terms that they would send women back to Afghanistan. I think your leader has been unequivocal that she would do exactly that. Is that correct?
Well, listen, we want a returns agreement with wherever we can get one, Trevor. That's obviously subject to negotiation between the different countries to be able to do that. Of course, I think Kemi's the toughest person in politics, and I think she'll strike those agreements. But what all Reform are doing now, from a few weeks ago, they were talking about towing the boats back to France, and they realised they couldn't do that. And all their plans now are a copycat, exactly the plans that we had in the last government, that we tried to get those, eventually got past Parliament in terms of passing the Rwanda Act to be able to return people to their home country, or if that could not happen, to a third country, Rwanda. And again, we got huge criticism for it. We eventually passed that legislation. The courts then tried to stop us. We had to overrule the courts. Many people in the media and politics were criticising us for taking that tough action. But that's what we did. And Reform are now copying those plans.